Hello, good morning, good afternoon, good evening, wherever you're joining us from. Welcome to another edition of our In Service podcast. I am Gerardo Pelayo, Chief Research Officer at Service Council, and I'm very glad to both about the topic that we're going to cover today and about the guest that we have. We're going to be discussing about artificial intelligence and the new frontline, rethinking technician enablement in service, and Leila Rookstool from ServiceTitan. She's a senior industry advisor over there. Is going to help me navigate this very ambitious agenda that we have today. But before we get to Leila, let me share a little bit of why we think it's important. And this is a topic that we've been talking about a lot lately, and for a reason. If I take a step back, and one of the things that in my life got stuck in the 90s is my Spotify playlist. My sisters will testify to that and do one or two hurtful jokes about it. But that's okay. It's not creating any restrictions. It's fun, and it's one of the best playlists that you'll find out there. But the problem is that when we talk about training in field service, we run our voice of the field service engineer every year, and this is one of the things that dangerously we continue to hear things like feels like the methodology got stuck in the 90s, the way in which we're being trained, the way in which knowledge is being transmitted, the user interfaces that we have are not advancing, are not moving forward. And why is this now a bigger problem, a more relevant conversation to have than in previous times? First off, I don't think a lot of people in service need convincing that service itself has gotten more complex. The install base is growing, assets are being serviced for a longer period of time, which means more models, more variations that are encountered out there in the field. Some of the strategies that many organizations are pursuing in order to move service from a cost center to a growth engine is multi-vendor service offerings, for example, which further adds to this complexity and what technicians need to be proficient at. And it's not just the complexity about the assets, but also the role that technology has played within that. The number of apps that are out there, the quantity and complexity of the data that they need to navigate, all of that is going up. And the data tells us as well. Over 4 in 5 technicians agree that everything that I've talked about so far has become harder and more complex over the last 5 years. Now, the good news is that on the other side, we also have resources that we didn't have before. And with the data comes also the power of how do we utilize that data, not just take it to a repository and leave it there to die, but actually make it applicable to the problem that is at hand, make it easily accessible, make it easy to communicate and internalize. And artificial intelligence definitely opens a window of opportunity there. The last thing I'll bring up around that is that it's neither a plug and play, and it's not all positives that come out of that. So the agenda today, the objective is to figure out how is it that we can best leverage what we have for the problem that has been here for a while, and it's just getting bigger. The all the retirement that I didn't talk about further adds to these issues. And how do we become aware of the risks and mitigate them as we navigate the proper implementation of AI? Very quick housekeeping, a reminder to all of our community that this is an interactive podcast. So if you're joining us on LinkedIn Live and you want to comment, you have additional thoughts around the conversation that we're having, a question, anything that you want to add, we invite you to participate, comment, and we'll try to incorporate it into the conversation. And finally, as we always do, today's podcast is being recorded and it will be available after it so that you can revisit it, share it with your peers in all of our Service Council media and everywhere that you listen to a podcast. With all of that said, Leila, once again, welcome. Thank you so much for being here and helping me navigate this topic. I've had the opportunity to get to know you a little bit, but why don't you give an introduction about yourself and also about ServiceTitan and the role that you play within the service industry?
Yeah, well, thank you again for having me. Leila Rookstool. I guess you could say that I was I was born and raised in the trade. So my family is four generations into working into like the mechanical, electrical, plumbing side of the trades. And I spent the bulk of my career working for an organization called Comfort Systems USA, and um, wore a number of different hats. But when you're working in specialty contracting in general, you're usually kind of faced between one or two paths, and that ultimately kind of comes down between service and construction. And I found myself early in my career kind of gravitating more toward the service end of operations, and kind of dove quickly into um, sales and business development, and more of our service operations, and got the opportunity to not only work with an operating company there for several years, but also transitioned into some roles on the corporate side, where I got to touch and work with and collaborate with many companies across Comfort Systems USA. And then I've also spent some time in consulting, and have ultimately landed myself here at ServiceTitan today. So
Perfect, perfect. Well, I'm humbled by being in the face of service royalty trades royalty here.
I
So
don't know about that.
we have the right profile. And if I could ask you to double click a little bit just on what the service titan relationship with your customers look like. What is your role within this whole ecosystem?
Yeah. So ServiceTitan, I think historically was known in the industry more as being an operating system or field service management platform that was initially kind of built around home services. But within the last couple of years, there has been a strategic focus more on expanding into the commercial sector. In fact, I was on the customer end of when they made the acquisition of Atlas Convex, which is more of a sales intelligence tool that's kind of akin to like a Zoom Info, but it's more specific to our industry. And
Hmm.
found myself kind of scratching my head. So that's an interesting acquisition by ServiceTitan, and that was kind of a segue into them getting into more of the commercial sector, and ultimately landed my role here as an industry advisor. And what I do is really support the team on more building out this commercial initiative, and focusing on working a lot with our product team on where there may be gaps or opportunities, to make our product more in line with commercial service workflows, and how that differentiates from the residential side. And I have just been amazed at the pace at which this team moves, and they are building out some really incredible things that I'm super pumped for. Things I'd always been wishing for on the commercial end, they're now becoming more and more tangible and more of a reality through ServiceTitan. So it's a really exciting thing to be a part of with this company for sure.
Perfect. So I'll go ahead and start picking your brain since you have a foot
Yeah.
on each side of the problem and the solution. And as we think about how we reimagine this technician enablement conversation, one of the first things that I think it's important to understand is what is attracting people into field service today. What is attracting them to the trades? We asked if I look only at those who joined over the last 3 years, from the ones that responded to our our survey, excuse me, almost half, 43%, said that they joined the trades because they wanted to change career roles, and field service seemed interesting. And we're seeing a little bit of this dynamic growing as AI is taking away many jobs in other areas. This was a significant jump from the previous year, where only 26% selected that same response. So it's starting to look like a trend. I'm curious, what is it that you're seeing? What are you perceiving in terms of the volume of people that are being attracted to the trades?
Yeah, I would say that data doesn't necessarily surprise me. I think I shared with you, I was at my nephew's graduation a few weeks ago, and
Mm.
this is a school that I have attended. He went to a private school here locally, and I've attended this graduation year over year for many years. And it was interesting to observe the number of kids that crossed the stage and said that they were pursuing a path in the trades. My nephew being one of them. I'm super proud of him. But it just got me thinking and my wheels spinning around. It's great to see these young people recognize the job security that is really building toward the trades and gravitating toward a career that's doesn't necessarily run the risk of becoming fully automated, right?
Hmm.
And I don't know if you saw Anthropic actually put out a report a couple of months ago that essentially was showing early evidence of within the labor market which categories were exposed in terms of the number of tasks that folks are automating within their day-to-day work lives. And it was no surprise when you look at the data and the statistics that Anthropic put out, construction and service in particular were on that in the realm of really low exposure. And so I think it just goes to show that, there's only so much that AI can do in terms of the skilled trades, and there is a lot of job security that these young people are recognizing. I myself, I have three boys, and my oldest is about to turn 13, and I'm kind of thankful that we have a few years of buffer to kind of see how
Mm.
AI plays out in terms of which career path they choose. But yeah, I think a lot of young folks, it's going to be interesting to see how the data plays out. I think it's a little early to tell. Um, but I think we will definitely see within the next 2 to 3 years a surge in interest and enrollment in apprenticeship programs and things of that nature.
Yes, indeed. First, I'll say I'll empathize with the benefits of having a little bit of a runway to figure this out. I have a 1.5-year-old, so my runway is a little bit longer, but still, it's something that you actively think about, right? How does the future landscape will look like? And one of the things that I see changing at a relatively accelerated pace in the industry is more and more organizations promoting apprenticeships, for example, uh, because you and I might know this. Not everybody knows explicitly about the benefits of the trades and also the bigger picture. And to that to that point, I said we wouldn't talk just about the positive, but I want to talk about the flip side early on,
Mm,
because while I said many are seeing field services interesting, that was the second most frequently selected response. The number one response by over 3 and 4 technicians was that they joined field service because they like fixing things, and
mm.
this gave them a chance to do so. And that sounds great, and it's even romantic. But one of the messages that we're often hearing about in the world of AI is this promise of having on-demand solutions. You'll get the answer right in your hands. It'll fall on your lap. Do you believe this could put talent attraction at risk, given that it represents such a large percentage of the respondents to date?
Well, I think while there are viable avenues for AI in the trades, it doesn't negate the fact that we're going to have skilled hands working
Hmm.
on equipment to actually address the failures, right? And I think to your point, people who naturally gravitate to the trades, particularly service, are folks who have an affinity for problem solving, and that's what makes them a great technician. And um, and so as business leaders, our goal should never be to engineer that out of them, right? We have to be clear about what role AI is playing, because inevitably there's going to be issues that arise in the field that no algorithm could ever solve for. And so we can't inhibit their ability to think critically for themselves. And that's so important. And it's important to the folks choosing a career path in the trades. But that doesn't mean that AI has no role to play. I think we
Hmm.
all know that, and we think about, okay, so what is the role? If it could surface the right IOM, if it could bring up the wiring diagram or the service history to pull in additional context, I think, the way we've got to think about this is it's going to accelerate critical thinking, not replace it. And that's what we've got to be clear about, within service and skilled trades, and thinking about this. So I think the answer in a long roundabout way to
Hmm.
your question is, I don't think it puts attraction at risk. If anything, I think it makes it a little less daunting for a young person or somebody completely green to the trades, knowing that they've got resources at hand, that's going to help them kind of get over this technical hurdle, of where they don't have knowledge or experience just yet. I think it could be, a really powerful recruiting tool, honestly, in a lot of respects.
Yeah, no, that's a great point, um, and this concept of reducing the barriers to entry, making it more accessible, I think has a lot of merit to it. The other thing that it suggests is that the profile of the people who are attracted to the trades is evolving as well. So that problem solving mindset is still there,
Mhm.
and I don't think it'll ever go away. But you're also thinking about technicians that embrace technology and that have grown up with technology being a part of their lives, right?
Mhm.
And and as a result, they expect the benefits that they see and the experience that they get in their day to day life to also translate to making their entry into the job market being simpler. So really like that point. And then the last part, last thought on that, but I want to get your reaction first, is the composition of demand itself. Like, what is it that people are solving for, and the type of assets? um, would you have you observed that changing in a significant way that is doing what we just addressed, attracting a new or a larger volume of people into the trades? And data
Well,
centers are one of the things that
yeah,
comes to mind.
yeah, no, I love this question because it's interesting to think about how, like, it comes full circle, and in terms of, AI is transforming, what workflows look like in the field today, but also we've got this huge surgence of data centers that are being built right now, and I think the data would clearly show you that. I think when I last read, it had tripled since 2023, the amount of investment that's happening, particularly within data centers. In fact, ServiceTitan put out an article on this recently. So with all of these data centers being built, naturally we're going to have skilled technicians on the service end to actually maintain and have the proper training and credentialing to work on some of these more specialized pieces of equipment. What I mean by that, I think specifically through the lens of HVAC, because that's where my background is,
Hmm.
right? So, like, what that could look like is now there may be more integrated into apprenticeship training, specifically on the HVAC side, where they have a dedicated focus on computer room AC units or air handlers that wasn't traditionally part of that training path before. And so I think there's a lot that's increasing demand, but it's also helping us kind of rethink or reimagine what that training should look like for different trades and how it's being impacted by it, for sure.
Yeah, I really like that perspective. I'm not alone on that. John Carroll, my colleague, also bringing up how World Economic Forum data sort of supports what we're talking about up there in the 15 fastest growing jobs, and I think that tackles part of the problem, which is attraction to the trades. It's not only at risk of not, is neither at a risk of slowing down, but it's actually an opportunity to attract more people into it. Now, just attracting them is not enough, right? Because we also see one early but significant red flag, which is a lot of people who are in their first year in field service are not planning to make a career out of it, and that is growing specifically. This fell from the 41% in 2024 and 2025 to the latest data, only 31% of first year technicians expected to make a career in field service. So, given your experience, you've touched, as I said, both sides of this story. Are there any best practices to deploy? Any examples that you've come across to improve this early engagement and satisfaction with the new technicians?
Well, I think it's really interesting data that you're talking about, and I part of me wants I want to go back and peel back the layers with you on maybe what else the data surfaced in terms of why that career path wasn't sticking for a lot of folks in service. But if I had to surmise in my mind, like what could be some of the contributors for that, some things that come to mind is, with all of with how AI is kind of transforming the landscape, there's a lot of noise that's happening. I would say, particularly for contractors, in terms of the amount of solutions, and they're getting constantly inundated with the latest and greatest technologies that are emerging, right? And so we kind of run the danger of introducing tools to our team that can create a frustrating experience in the field. So let's kind of talking through what that could look like is if it's particularly in the way of AI, well, AI is only as good as the data that's backing it, right? Mm-hmm. And so if the technician is newer to the trade or to the industry and they are more reliant on the tool in the beginning versus, further into their career path, and they've noticed frequently that the prompts are very faulty or the data that it's surfacing is very faulty, well, that creates a really, frustrating experience for a technician. And so I do think that there is some exposure here on the technology side on why this could potentially be what it is, what the data is showing you. And what I would say is, as business leaders, anytime you're considering a new technology, particularly in the way of AI, I would highly encourage folks to really pressure test that. Bring your own prompts to the table and mm-hmm. make sure that it's giving you good quality results with the prompts that your techs may be introducing in the field. And so choosing the right technology partner. The other thing I'd say is I think about too that could be a risk that we're running is there's kind of expectations that are building around AI in terms of how quicker or more efficient it should make us in the field. And so, is that inadvertently creating more pressures on technicians in terms of how quick they should get to a resolution or what that first time fix rate should be like, since we now have this AI that's in the mm-hmm. loop. So I would just highly encourage also that we don't abandon the value of the human in the loop, because to me, the technician that maybe spends 45 minutes troubleshooting an issue completely independent of any app or technology out there is much more valuable than the one that maybe spent 20 minutes on the same issue, but they used the tool completely. And the reason for that is because, tools, technology, AI, it's going to get you so far no matter what you choose to invest in. There's always going to be a ceiling, and we've got to set up these folks to really still be able to think critically for themselves in the field. I think about I don't know if you watch The Office.
Yes,
but I think about that one episode where Michael Scott's in the car with Dwight, and he is listening to GPS to get him to his next destination, and directs him to drive right through the lake. And Michael unfortunately drives into the lake because he was listening to the GPS and not his own critical thinking. And I know that's an extreme comparison, but Yeah, it's we've got to be careful too about the reliance that we're creating, and the expectations that are building around it as well.
Absolutely, especially because that's an exaggerated example. In practice, the dangers are not going to be that obvious, right? So
Yeah.
having that critical mindset, critical thinking, is even more important. And in general, I think that uh, a key need as AI is incorporated is to find a way to maintain accountability.
Mhm.
I want to go back to so you made a lot of great points there, and one of them was the 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 aspect about the trust
Mhm.
in the data. You asked me a question even on what are the other elements that are leading to that first year living. Two main things that we're observing: the reliability um, of the data that they perceive is
Mhm.
dropping. And this is happening, by the way, not just for first year technicians, but across the board, even at the senior level. And that itself is highly correlated with many other aspects of the employee experience, including their satisfaction with salary. The other, and this is one where I want to pick your brain again, is the dissatisfaction with the onboarding experience. I sort of teased that at this during the introduction, but the proportion of technicians that feel satisfied with their onboarding experience is dropping by about 10% over the last 3 years. And we see that this has long-term impacts, not just in new technicians that are considering to stay, but also their perception, their openness to the quality of the data, um, the the right sizing of the data that is in front of them. Have you come across whether it's or what are some specific examples maybe that you could call out of how this training has improved the experience for technicians, whether it's in the onboarding stage or later in the process, as many organizations are thinking about time to value and the importance of it. It often comes up in our KPIs and metrics.
Yeah.
How is it that that is making them more comfortable, helping them drive the customer experience?
Yeah, I wanna go back, take one step back to what you're talking about with the onboarding, and one thing
Hmm.
that immediately came to mind for me is, you start to wonder too, is if there is so much of a reliance on technology to see that onboarding process through, that we've kind of taken things out that were traditionally part of that onboarding experience. So again, don't forget about the human in the loop and the value of them spending physical time with a more senior technician as part of that onboarding experience, because there's still so much value to be garnered from that. And AI and technology should be considered as addition to those things. But um, I think, we were, to your question on the time to value, I think previously we were operating in a world where if a technician hit a wall in the field, um, that they're diagnosing something or they're trying to troubleshoot on something, they can't get to the root of it. What would often result is they'd have to make a phone call to a more senior technician to kind of talk and troubleshoot through that. At least that was kind of my experience working
Hmm.
on the service end. And so it's not to say that that never happens anymore, because I very much guarantee that those phone calls still happen. But I think that AI is definitely helping. We use within here at ServiceTitan, the tool we use is Atlas. And when they can leverage a tool like Atlas in the field to strengthen their critical thinking and troubleshooting skills to where they don't have to make that phone call, I do think that it's a very powerful retention lever, because technicians are starting to gain more self-confidence faster, um,
Hmm.
because they are able to kind of weigh and troubleshoot through those things independent of being reliant on a more senior technician. But again, I want to iterate, that doesn't devalue, that relationship and then the opportunities for that technician to train underneath a more senior tech. But inevitably they're all spread out in the field, and there's going to be times and there's going to be scenarios where they're not paired together throughout their training or their onboarding.
Hmm.
They do have to operate independently, and so it's a tool and a means by which they can gain more confidence and work more independently, for sure.
Yeah, a couple of highlights. So time to value is usually perceived as a business metric, right? And it helps you with your margins, with your costs. What you just said, I think it emphasizes that bigger picture, that faster time to value also helps make the technicians more self-confident and therefore more likely to deliver a better experience, more likely to have a longer career in service. And it's
Mhm.
not just, as you also said before, about raising the expectations on them and asking them to do more in the same amount of time because now you have more resources. One of the negative signals that we're seeing in the data on that is that even though they feel by and large that productivity and efficiency has improved, when we ask, has data and technology made your work, made your day-to-day easier, that is another one that went from 73% 3 years ago to 69% to only 62% agreement in the latest set. So not just throwing the resources at people helps, but actually balancing it or aligning it with the expectations, with the incentives that are gonna make for a better experience. And one of the last things that I want to address within that are specifically the training paths and what those look like.
Hmm.
I could recite you the statistics, but they're in the same trend. Like it's dropping. Less than 3 in 4 feel satisfied with the quality of the training resources and the fact of them improving over the last 5 years. Do you have an example, some work that you've done where these training paths are being reimagined to address this issue?
Yeah, well, in terms of the satisfaction and some of what the data is telling you, I think again, it kind of circles back to an earlier point around if there are technologies that are being looped into this, what's the quality of data? What's the quality of the outputs that they're
Mhm.
producing? Um, you know, I would say like one topic of discussion that we're having here at ServiceTitan in relation to training and how things are being viewed differently or how things are um, evolving, so to speak, and what role AI is going to play in that is there an opportunity where your operating system is connected directly into like training and certification paths? So for instance, like if there's a job type that populates and it correlates with a specific competency or hands-on skill that needs to be performed in the field, rather than automatically assigning the technician who's closest, let's first assign the person who's more qualified from a training and certification perspective. That creates a better customer experience for both the technician and the customer, right? But then we're also setting up opportunities to enhance that training by, potentially coupling them with a more apprentice level trainee that could come and observe specific tasks being performed in the field. And so I think companies, even during my time at Comfort Systems, there's lots that's being explored because there is such an opportunity and gap, particularly for skilled trades, that demand has been growing over the past 10 to 15 years, right? And so I think owners and contractors and business leaders are even looking at, it used to be that we kind of took this traditional 4-year path and that was based on the Department of Labor of 2,000 hours, 4 years. And so I do think I've seen more of a trend where contractors are pursuing more of a customized path. If they're not heading into more federal government work, then they have to have apprentices that are by this 2,000-hour metric, where they take a more customized approach to that too. And I think a lot of companies are looking at how to redefine training and things of that nature to make it more of to upskill faster and to also to make it more of a streamlined experience for folks who are considering the trades as well. So yeah, there's lots to consider
Mhm.
in terms of how these training paths are starting to take form, particularly within the industry for sure.
And those examples speak directly to some of the challenges that we hear from the front line, which is training feels like drinking from a fire hose. It's a lot all at the same time. The 4 year career is probably an example, and they say by the time we finish learning something, it's not where we end up spending most of our time. So the
Mhm.
applicability of what is learned is a big issue there, and also the way in which it is delivered and mapped to the work that they get allocated. Um, last thing before I let you go, because we've been focusing mostly on the experience of the technicians, of the field service engineers, but there's implications as well of everything that we've talked about and the role that AI is playing in that enablement on the customer experience on the business side of the house. Can you maybe just highlight a couple of those outcomes, those results that you observed as we start connecting the dots between these three personas?
Yeah, I mean, I think underpinning all of this is there's really two stories that could unfold. The first one being a more positive story where there's, let's just say, a 20-year-old who's decided to enter the trades and was maybe initially intimidated by his or her lack of technical knowledge. And, AI was something that helped streamline that, help that individual build more confidence and upskill even faster. And there's great results from that. And then there's another story to where the tools create more of a false ceiling and false confidence, and they set the technician up to fail because the AI, the system failed them, and therefore, we didn't get to the right resolution, or there was a callback, and
Mm-hmm.
um, that resulted in poor customer experience and eroding margins and things of that nature. So we have to be intentional as business leaders to really find the middle ground of using AI for augmentation and not producing complete dependency where it can, really cripple a technician's ability to think critically for themselves. And the goal should always be um, to build a better technician and in fact create more positive customer experiences and better profitability at the end of the day as well.
Yeah, no, I fully agree. I've long been an advocate of the technician experience really caps what can be achieved from a customer experience and a business experience in the long term. So fully agree with that vision. You've let me ask a lot of questions. Thank you for indulging me. I'll wrap up with a simple one. Do you mind sharing a little bit about yourself outside of work? Any passion project, anything that you want to share with our audience about Leila?
Well, I guess I could say today I'm celebrating 15 years of marriage. So
Oh wow!
yeah, yeah. So that's kind of cool. But on a personal note, and I've been happily married 15 years, three boys, and we love spending our time out on the river or out on the lake somewhere on a boat. So very much looking
Hey,
forward to that this weekend, probably.
that's fantastic. Congratulations, and say thank you to your husband for giving us a little bit of the time on this special day to join us over here at the studio.
Absolutely.
Once again, very, very interesting conversation, very valuable perspectives, Lila. To our larger community, once again, thank you for joining us. A reminder that today's podcast was recorded, and we hope to see you in the next iteration. Have a great rest of the week as we are getting closer to the start of the summer. See you next time.